Hey guys, and welcome to Kyle's Cinema. Today I'm going to be giving you my Ghost of Yotei review. Everything in my review is going to be spoiler free, and it's all going to be held within the first 10 to 15 hours of game time. Let me start with the obvious, which is the fidelity. The world of Ghost of Yotei is absolutely stunning, somehow even more so than Ghost of Tsushima, which is already a great looking game, and it's still a great looking game to this day. From the Rocky Mountains to the snowy fields and frozen lakes, the game has the perfect balance of visuals. I love the small details in Fidelity. I noticed things early on, like your blade managing to cut down grass during combat, or the way that leaves floated around your feet while you walk through them, and even the way blood flows in the water in the game if you kill an enemy. The game really is one of the best looking games out there, and a big props to that comes from the art style. It really is just incredible. If you played Ghost of Tsushima, you know what to expect here. They've basically turned the dials up on all details of the game. Every area of the game feels completely different, from the first section of the game being an absolute graphical showcase with big mountains and wide open fields, to the second area of the game being a nice red tone with red leaves and red grass. Then you come into a snowy area with beautiful frozen lakes and fog that blocks your vision. There's obviously so much more, but I wouldn't want to spoil everything for you. I feel like you need to experience it for yourself. I didn't run into any visual or gameplay bugs throughout my entire gameplay, which is honestly amazing for a game in 2025, sadly. It really did just run smoothly for me the whole way through. If I did have one small nitpick that I noticed pretty early on, it was that I had come across 3 NPCs early in the game and noticed they all shared the same character model. This didn't hurt my gameplay whatsoever, but it was just honestly a little strange. You could take a screenshot of almost any moment in this game and put it as your PC's wallpaper. It's actually kind of insane. Another thing is the performance mode and the graphics modes. I swapped between the two early on in the game, and the game looks so good already that I couldn't even really tell the difference when swapping between the three. I think the way everything feels so natural in the environment and the way that they've done the lighting in this game really helps everything feel so real. Now that brings us to the story. You play as Atsu, a girl whose parents are murdered by the Yotei Six while she's just a little girl. This sets Atsu on a life to gain vengeance for her family. The story comes off a little generic at first, and we've kind of all heard this story before, but Ghost of Yotei does throw things at every moment that it can to kind of keep it feel fresh. Now while I say that, it's not all good. Atsu can come off a bit stuck up and annoying sometimes, but they do a good job with the family and friend dynamics along the way to show not everything is what it seems with Atsu. I feel like her character development is really good throughout the game. Another thing that I liked, which was optional throughout the story, was you could go back to her childhood home and you could choose to do flashback missions. I thought these were very interesting. I won't go into too much detail, but I highly recommend doing these if you can. Now obviously the story wasn't as good as Ghost of Tsushima, but that story was kind of a masterpiece, so you can't really expect that. There's not much I can say about the story without getting into spoilers. But I have seen a lot of criticism online about the story and how people are saying that it doesn't meet up to the expectations that Ghost of Tsushima had set. I personally don't think it's warranted because this is its own story and not a continuation of Jin Sakai's story. I understand it's not as good as the first game's story, but that story was like lightning in a bottle, and it was never going to be replicated for a second time in a row. One thing I loved about this game is the boss encounters, mostly speaking on the main bosses. Because the bosses are different types of enemies and they all fight in a different way, the developers have made it so that it forces you to use different weapons throughout each boss. They also put a good emphasis on how important it is to the story when you're fighting each boss. One thing I didn't like about the story was how it was paced. I didn't like how in each chapter of the story they just placed a bunch of random plot markers on the map similar to Far Cry 5 or even Assassin's Creed Valhalla by memory. There's not really any direction, so you lose which way you should attack the story. I wish they had made it more linear like the first game instead of just picking one story marker and continuing on from there. With the way it's set out, it can become easy to become unengaged with the story a little bit. I don't think it makes it bad whatsoever, but it hurts the pacing of the game just a little bit. Okay, so if you've played Ghost of Tsushima, Ghost of Yotei's gameplay will feel incredibly similar to you. Reason being is because they haven't really innovated on the formula since the previous game, but the reason being is because the gameplay is just so good to begin with that they didn't really have to. From every swing of the sword feeling weighty and satisfying and every dodge or parry feeling super important, I think they really do have a masterpiece of gameplay systems. They've also added a new weapon dismantle system where if you don't hit a certain button in a time frame, your weapon falls to the ground and you have to go pick it up before you can attack back. You can also learn this yourself as a skill later on if you want to. Sometimes, but mostly at the beginning of the game, the Ubisoft style of gameplay did bother me just a little bit, but I think that just comes down to the fatigue in this style of game. One thing I did love was some of the random encounters you can come across during the game. Some of these honestly feel like main story missions, which speak to how good they are. You could be travelling in this world and randomly get stuck into one of these encounters and you never feel bored. It makes the world feel so alive. Things from the previous games are also here, like the bamboo training to increase your spirit level and hot springs to increase your max health. Then there's new things like a bounty system for you to earn coins to buy items and shrine puzzles for you to gain charms. There's also wolf dens where you can help wolves to gain new skills for Atsu. One problem I had was the puzzles in the game. These felt really unnecessary to me. I'd go as far as saying I hated these. There's times during the game where you feel like your engagement gets taken away from the story because you get stuck doing some frankly boring puzzles. Another example of this is I spent about 10 to 15 minutes climbing a mountain just to do a puzzle at the end of it and got a pretty boring charm. This really frustrated me and I didn't really feel like continuing after that. I think Sucker Punch has done a very good job of utilising all the DualSense features, which is probably a little underrated. There's things like the haptics in the controller that make you feel every single moment of the game, and there's things like the motion controls for forging weapons to using the touchpad for painting, and the good thing is you can skip all these things if you aren't interested. I must say, if there's one thing that's still really amazing, it's just travelling through this game's world. It's honestly so impressive. You can honestly travel through the world for hours and never get bored. There's always something along the way to your next mission that you can do, so you'll never get bored, but that's only if you like this style of game. Another thing that saved this game for me when I did manage to get bored was the fast travel. It's honestly amazing. If you look on the screen, I've put up a couple of examples. It's damn near instant. It's honestly impressive. I think it's great to see another developer really try and push the hardware on the PS5. Alright, that brings me to the weapons. You have your regular katana, which is for attacking your standard enemies with one sword. Then you have dual katanas for attacking enemies that are carrying spears. Then you have the adachi, which is for attacking the brute style of enemies that you've seen in just about every other game out there. You've also got the yari, which is for attacking enemies with sickles and dual-wielded weapons. Then you have the kasuragami, which is for breaking shielded enemies' shields. Then you have the obvious stuff like a bow and smoke bombs and other types of accessories. All the weapons here feel great, and they are all needed in their own ways. If you don't use the right weapons on the right enemy, you will definitely struggle. Sometimes it becomes a little bit overwhelming having to swap weapons constantly during combat, but I mean this in a good way. It really mixes up the gameplay dynamic. You also have stealth, where if you've played Ghost of Tsushima or any Assassin's Creed game, it's pretty much standard and there's not really much to talk about here.
Some of you were born to this land. Others, like myself, were forced to make Ezo our home. A home we have built beyond the Shogun's control, where anyone can join Clan Saito and be named samurai, if they are brave enough to earn it. Clan Matsumai call themselves the Protectors of the North. But this land is ours, and we will defend our home!
Now the audio in this game is just outstanding. From the noise of the katana being drawn to the crunch of snow below your feet, or even things like hearing the leaves shuffle around you as you walk through a field, the audio is definitely an underrated aspect of the game. They really know how to use it during each key moment of the gameplay and the story. One of my favourite parts is the slow draw of your katana during the start of each boss fight. It really adds to the intensity. Overall, I'd say if you liked Ghost of Tsushima, you'd definitely like Ghost of Yotei. Even with the story not quite on the level of Ghost of Tsushima, the story here is still good enough to keep you hooked and wanting to know what happens next. If you're over that style of Ubisoft open world game, you may want to think before you buy this game, as that could definitely become a bother to you. There was definitely times throughout the game where that did end up frustrating me. I think a lot of the fast travelling elements saved that for me though. Now with all that said, would I recommend the game? I'd say definitely, as long as you enjoy this style of game. If you enjoyed Ghost of Tsushima, I'd definitely recommend you try this one out. Thank you guys for watching. If you could like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Please leave me a comment below on what your thoughts are of Ghost of Yotei, and I'll make sure I reply to you guys. I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye bye.